Nan van Houte from IETM, thank you very much for agreeing to have a conversation with me this evening, my time, and a little bit late morning, your time in Brussels.
Sure. My pleasure.
One of the things that I'd like to really start the discussion with is if you could give we're interested really in the kind of cultural dynamics and the politics that affect the cultural dynamics in Europe at the moment. I was wondering if you just kind of give a compression of what the kind of defining features are of that landscape at the moment.
Yeah. Well, we all suffer, I think, globally at this moment from several tendencies. And the same is true for Europe. We see politically, and then I can later on tell about what it has for impact on the cultural policies, which are not fully in line yet. But we see political tendencies. One is the populist parties, anti-elitist movements that is gaining ground in Europe in several countries, and they frame arts as an elitist hobby, spending or using taxpayers' money for something that is not used by their constituency. So some of for instance, Geert Wilders, who is now gaining ground in the Netherlands, he, in his one-page policy paper for the next elections, he proposed to cut all subsidy on the arts. So this is one of the fears, of course. The other, and it's not only in the Netherlands, we see the populists in France, in Germany, in Austria gaining ground. The other movement we see, or development we see, is the ultra-nationalists. They're not necessarily the same as the populists, but Hungary and Poland, for instance, at this moment have an ultra-nationalist government, and their policy is not to cut the arts, but to direct it in a so-called patriotic way. So they only fund patriotic art forms to expose and enhance and install the national identity, which means that they replace all the art directors in key positions in the arts by their own strawman. And then, of course, you still have populations in Europe, thank God, that are very in favor of the arts. So you see in Germany, in France, there is a big national pride still for the arts. And I think there is a constituency. I don't think that these populations would ever allow their governments to totally cut subsidies on the arts. But what we see is, well, it is not really. And in Italy at this moment, there is a regeneration of the arts, or of the interest in the arts. And well, you see that cultural ministries more and more tend to, and IETM is stimulating this a lot, tend to talk with artists about how to defend their own case, because we have the feeling now that we are in the same boat. We have the same dangers. The cultural ministers have to defend their case in their governments, and so they are more, in a way, the dialogue is better than before.
Yeah.
I would say.
And do you? I mean, I'm interested. Is the movement to resist? Does that go? Does that include relationships with the non-art sectors to try and mobilise across society to get those people that are outside the arts to advocate on behalf of the arts to government?
Yeah, well, that's one of the strategies that we follow now, is to try to link up with other adjacent sectors to see if they could also promote our value for society, etc. You see some ministries that also, I think we see now there are three agenda points, I think, that are quite common on the policy agendas of the ministries in different countries, and also on EU level, which is audience development. And I think it has a lot to do with trying to gain more validation for the arts in society. It's not because we lose so many audiences, but it is more, if we reach more, then we have more constituency. So I think that is the argumentation behind this focus on audience development also as an indicator for the assessment. The other one is the new business models, and that is our business model innovation. Even though none of us like this focus on this, I understand that it has to do with the fear from the funders that there will be cuts anyhow. And the third one is indeed try to connect with other sectors, as some of the ministries try to do themselves as well in their policies, but also they incite arts organizations to do so. Yeah.
What about in the European Commission? There was some years ago there was a real move to mainstream the arts across all of the portfolios of the EC. Is that still practice, or is that still part of the philosophy and approach?
To put culture in the other policies.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because Frans Timmermans, being the vice president now, he said that he really wants to, but it's not, and we really strive to do so. We made an alliance for the arts and culture with 30 cultural networks, and this is one of our aims, is to get culture in the other portfolios, but it is a way to go still.
Yeah.
I mean,
okay.
It's not adapted.
It's not achieved as yet.
No, indeed.
I'd love to ask you. I'm really interested in the idea of anti-elitism, and in this kind of the kind of populist political movements, because in the sort of wake of Trump being elected to president, there was a lot of discussion around that there was a vote against the elites, and I'm always interested in, for a start, the arts being put into this idea of the elite, I sort of can perceive that within the arts themselves, but in general, artists in a country like Australia, they're quite bottom of the food chain, so it's interesting to find them characterised in that way. And I wanted to ask a question that's a bit leading, and because I'm interested in when a kind of neoliberal, and Trump's been characterised recently as a neo-fascist, when that kind of very ideological drive comes into the politics, do you think it's, by attacking artists and the arts, do you think it's actually about the agenda is because they actually defend democracy?
Sorry, who defends democracy?
Well, that the reason why the arts and the artists are under attack is because actually they are the oxygen for democracy.
Oh yeah. No, definitely. It is because it is about critical thinking, or stimulating critical thinking. Yeah. It's about stimulating empathy. It's about stimulating, all this interaction, open dialogue, etc. No, exactly, it is. I mean, it is an attack. I feel it as an attack on democratic values.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
And it is.
Sorry, go on.
No, go on.
Well,
I mean,
I was just thinking when it came up for when this happened last year for you know, that there was a real shift against the arts from the government. There was part of the characterisation of that was around. It's certainly something that I've felt that actually it was around if you can kind of control and censor and diminish the presence of the arts and the actions of artists in society, then you really are in a position where you can control the kind of irrational impulses of democracy.
Yes, it's true. I mean, it's very hard maybe to prove the democratic impact of the arts, but it's very easy to prove that all dictatorship primarily aim at journalists and artists whenever they are in power. So we are always the victim of the and that is, for me, it's the other way around. But it's
their way to measure it. Yes, exactly.
We are dangerous for dictators, and that's and that means that that we support democratic values.
So the three strategies that you've got is at the moment are about, you know, amplifying the audience, increasing the audience, developing new models around innovation. We have that word in Australia too.
It's very much stimulated by our governments, you could say, and also on European level. At the other hand, what we see happening at this moment is that the career path of artists, apart from their remuneration, I mean, indeed, they are still at the bottom of, I mean, they are the ones that have never increased their budgets or their money to live over the last 10, 20 years, while all other positions did. Well, you know better than I do. You research that. The other thing is that their career paths become more and more discontinuous. They have to. You see that the long-term contracts are almost abolished now, and it has several causes. One of the things behind it is indeed that the cuts of the budgets, because we have seen that all over Europe, almost all over Europe. With the economical crisis. The other one is that there is a tendency in the arts at this moment to focus more on the makers and on the small scale work, and less on the bigger companies with their own tableau. Yeah. So those actors, I mean, at this moment, I just heard the figure in the Netherlands, it's only 50 actors that has a permanent contract anymore, and it used to be thousands. So this is a real decline in number, and all those others work on freelance contracts. Yeah. That means that they live in very insecure social situation.
When they go off their contracts, are they supported by social welfare?
Well, there is, yes, but also that has been cut.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there is social welfare, and then you're not allowed to work.
Yeah.
In your own job. So it's and of course you do, but it is a very unfortunate situation. So our next meeting in Bucharest will solely focus on the status of the artists, because we think that is at this moment the most important thing to look at. Fantastic, that's great. In fact, one of the things that I really would like to ask, and which hopefully we'll be discussing at the Arts Front conference next week, is firstly, I think this time around we're really trying to focus on what's going on in Australia and really in the arts, but clearly we need to, develop our advocacy cross-sectorally. So joining with non-arts sectors to promote and advocate on behalf of the arts. But also, I think one of the things that we really need to be thinking about is how to organise globally
how to connect globally, because obviously these are issues that we face in all democracies at the moment. So I'm curious, what things would you like to see that are generated in a sort of a national conference in Australia about trying to increase advocacy and looking outwards rather than just being inwards? Because in a way, that inward looking aspect is something that the sort of conservative, the neoliberal governments really want us to do. They want us just to, not internationalise, not globalise, but I think this is the time actually where we probably need to more than anything.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it is good to see it as a global movement, that we have to start to defend the arts globally, especially since what's happened week before, 2 weeks before in the US. I think it is a global issue at this moment. Everywhere we have to stand up for the arts. Yeah, so let's start a global movement.
Okay, we have decided now we're going to start a global movement, and we begin in Australia next week, and we connect with IETM throughout Europe, and in America it will take us just a matter of a few weeks. It will happen virally, and we will be a powerful force, all the better for being together rather than actually being isolated.
I think it's, yes, you have my vote.
All right, we have an agreement. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll take all of these thoughts to the conference next week, and it's always a pleasure to see you, even though you are still a long way away.
Okay, it was great speaking to you, and have a very nice day in Footscray, isn't it?
It is actually. It's in Footscray, which is just a little bit out of, it's sort of inner city Melbourne, but in the west.
Okay, enjoy.
Thanks.
Good conference.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.